And we didn't have all the luxury we have now. And I made a statement, I think it might have been a couple weeks ago as well, or it might have been on Facebook. Somebody might mention a while ago, I think, that was on Facebook something. I made a statement about, listen, when people come to church hunger for God, most of those other things aren't a big deal to them in most cases. When you are really seeking God, you're hungry for God, you can put up some things. When you're seeking God and you're hungry for God, it won't matter if the preacher's through by 12 o'clock or not. If he is, fine. If he ain't, fine, because we're there to worship God. It won't matter. It won't matter who's preaching. I said before, a singer can get up, they can sing, Mary Had a Little Lamb. If we're there to worship God, we can worship right along with them. Because Mary did have a little lamb. Who was as white as the driven, or pure as the driven snow. So, anyway, they ain't nowhere in my notes, won't cost you anything extra. But just thought I'd throw it in while we were there. Hallelujah. But it's not about the externals. It's about the fellowship with God and fellowship with people. And so we see here the futility of ritualistic worship. Ritualistic worship thinks that divine favor can be obtained by offering sacrifices to God. That's not how you obtain God's favor. Sacrifice is part of the Christian life, like we've already established. But that's not how we obtain God's favor, through sacrifice. We can't work for God's favor through sacrifice. And so spiritual change and moral transformation mark the atonement of God's people. Spiritual transformation, spiritual change, moral transformation. Listen, we talk about the great move of God that happened years ago and how the God still wants to move today. Listen, you can tell when there's a move of God going on. Won't be because you can't judge a move of God by how high people are shouting. Although that's well and good. I'd love to get in that. You can't judge a move of God by how many people are rolling on the floor, falling out like cordwood. That's not how you judge a move of God. You judge a move of God by how they live once they leave here. What kind of life are they living? What kind of fruit are they bearing once they leave the revival meeting? Amen? That's what marks the spot. That's what marks whether people are really walking in the atonement of God. And here's the important question. What I've been trying to get to the whole time. If we are, as Micah said, if we are doing justly, we're loving mercy, and we're walking humble before God, do we have a servant's heart? Do we have a servant's heart? Well, let me say it like this. Do you use people or do you serve people? Do we use people to get us reach a certain end or certain means? Do we use them and then once we're through using them, we're no longer, we forget about them being our friend and we forget about them being our brother or sister? Do we use them or are we serving them? Do we have a servant's heart? That's a question all of us need to continually ask ourselves and keep before us. Am I using people or am I serving people? Look at verse 11. Well, let me go back and get a minute, verse 10. All right, verse 10, they come to him. They say he's a lawful heal on Sabbath, okay? And they were trying to find him, trying to accuse him. So verse 11, listen, he always answered their questions. Jesus always had an answer, and the answer in this case was obvious. Then he said, Jesus said to them, what man is there among you who has one sheep, and if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not lay hold of it and lift it out? You use that same illustration about an ox. We call it the ox in the ditch thing. When there's certain thing we have to do on the Lord's Day that we have to do, it's called the ox in the ditch. Some people have to work on Sunday sometimes. That's the ox in the ditch. You know, that's permissible. That's excusable. That's understandable.